Hi guys, this is Mike. In this Cinema 4D tutorial, I'm going to show you how to model and UV a hand. What we're going to do is we're going to do some basic modeling to build out our hand, and then I'm going to bring you into UV Edit and do an introduction on how to make UVs within Cinema 4D. Okay, I'm going to go into model layout just because I like working in that layout. And what I'm going to do is we're going to build the hand first. So what I'll do is go to cylinder, and I'm going to go to NB to bring up our lines. I'm going to take off caps because we don't need that. I'm going to put this into the orientation. I think doesn't matter too much, but I prefer working within this orientation. So I'm going to keep it in the Z. I'm going to go to 8 rotation segments. And in terms of the height and radius, we don't have to worry about that too much. I'm just going to shrink this down a little bit and make this editable. Okay, I'm going to go into line mode. And let me zoom in a bit. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to UL and make a loop selection. I'm going to go to E for directional tool, and I'm going to command click and drag in this axis. This will give me a nice line here. We'll pretend that's going to be the wrist. So I'm just going to rotate this around. And then what I'm going to do for the hand is I'm going to go to our object mode, or excuse me, our model mode, and I'm going to just command click and drag, and that's going to give us a copy. I just realized I don't really need this line here, so I'm just going to go to UL and I'm just going to dissolve. So we're just basically the same thing as we had before. The only thing different is when I go to model mode, I just want to increase the size a little bit. So we're going to have 2 objects. This will be the wrist, and this will be the base of our hand. So at this point, what I want to do is I want to select these polygons. So I'm going to select these 2, and I'm going to rotate around, and I'm going to select these 2 here, and I'm going to extrude. So I'm going to go to D on the keyboard. That's going to extrude these out. And if I go into this axis, I'm going to, with these polygons selected, just going to shrink these down a little bit. Okay, so what I want to do next is I want to flatten these polygons out. So I'm just going to select those 2, select these, and holding down shift, and that's going to give me 10-degree increments, and that'll get me down to 0%. Now flatten that out. And let me do that on this side as well. T. In this axis, hold down shift, get down to 0%. Oops. And now what I want to do is I want to go over and select these polygons. So we have both sides selected. T, and in this axis, just kind of shrink these down a little bit more. Now I don't really like this little bump here, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to select, go into line mode, select this line and this line, T on the keyboard. I'm just going to flatten that a bit. Now we kind of have this big hole here, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go MD, close polygon hole, and I'm going to go to KK. I'll bring up our line. We'll go in single line mode. Put a line down right in the center and one right across. Now we have this weird setup with these lines, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to select these. Actually, I'm going to go into point mode, select these 2 points, and then kind of pull these in until about straight. And you can go to your front view, and if you want to get that pretty exact. Okay, so we're looking good. What I want to do now is I kind of feel like this is a little bit wide. So I want to go to our polygon mode. I just want to shrink this in a bit. I think that's a little bit better. Let me take a look here. Okay, so at this point we can kind of connect these 2 objects. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into model mode, select these by a left mouse click button, and then drag. So we select these 2, and then what I'm going to do is right click and connect objects plus delete. I'm just going to name this hand, even though it's hand and wrist. Okay, so we do have this gap here, so let's fix that first. And I can select this loop. We already have that selected. So let's go to UL, select this loop. So we're going to have to go to select boundary loop. Yes. Shift, and we'll go to MP, and that's going to bring up stitch and sew. And we can grab to this point, and that'll give us our connection here. Now I could go with shift and now bridge that gap with that geometry. I think it's fine with this, and I'm trying to keep this fairly low polygon. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to make these fingers, and you can probably imagine already what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in an extrude for each of these four sections, these 4 columns that we have here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select, let's go to polygon mode, and select here. I'm going to go to inner extrude, or extrude inner, and we'll go to I on our keyboard, and we're just going to build this geometry here, and then E on the keyboard, and we'll just pull that out just a bit. And then we'll go to D to extrude. In fact, we'll just go Command, click and drag in this axis. We'll pull this out. I want to go to our, get a top view look here. And I want to Command click again and drag to extrude this. So we have the joint of our finger, you know, the knuckle here, and then the bend in our finger here, and then we'll have another one that pulls out to about here. So I guess in a way, the best way to look at this is our hand, this will be sort of the pointer finger, and our thumb will come out in this section here. So technically this would be the left hand. Okay. The only issue here that we have is that it's not tapering the way that we would want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to line mode, and I'm going to select these 2 ends, and I'm going to go to transform in this axis, pull this down just a bit. And now what I want to do is I want to go to UL and make sure I'm off this select boundary loop, so uncheck that. And I want to select, I think what I'll do is I'm going to select this loop and this loop as well, transform, I'm just going to bring this down a bit. UL, deselect that one, transform this one a little bit more, or these two a little bit more. UL, control click, deselect that one. And then I'm just going to shrink this one down. Actually, make sure I'm in this mode here. And we're looking pretty good. The only thing I want to do now maybe is flatten down this whole bit here. And let me turn on tolerance selection. And just kind of flatten this a bit. Okay, that looks okay. And I want to do the same thing for these guys here. So let's do this real quick. Enter extrude. I'm going to pull this out. Command click and drag. This will be the middle finger. I'm going to shrink this down. Select these loops. Whoops, turn that off. Sometimes I accidentally hit L and it brings up this enable axis manipulation. So I'm just gonna be careful about that. And just kind of look at the sizing of your of these fingers, and just kind of make sure which ones are long and which ones are short. Make that a little bit smaller. UL, T. Okay, what I can do here is I can go to UI, hit that a few times, and that's going to grow the selection. And shrink this down, flatten this down a little bit. And let's take a look at our other hand here. A bit of a size discrepancy here, and we can adjust that. You know, keeping in mind that hands tend to be a little bit flatter, so we can flatten this out overall, and we can take a look at that as well. Maybe shrink this up. That shouldn't be an issue. So let's get this one in. Pull this out. T. Actually, let me command click and drag, and this will be say the ring finger. And click and drag and pull this out. Now we'll grab these lines. Looks like I pulled this one out a little bit too much, so I'll fix that as well. T. Get this a little bit nicer. And let's go to UL. Select these loops. And you can do this, you can resize these as you're extruding them. You could do that as well. And I'm going to go to polygon mode, go UI, UI, UI. Now I'll grow that selection, and then we can shrink this down and get this similar to the others. Pull this down here. Just want to go to this loop and just kind of pull this back a bit. So let me select these two, extrude inner, pull this out a little bit, make sure not to go too far, and then command click and drag, and then if I want I can transform. Command click and drag, T, transform a little bit more. So you can see I can kind of do this on the fly as I'm pulling this back or extruding this. So I'm going to select these lines here. This is a little tough. Let's go under here, select those. T. Let's kind of get this a little bit better. Okay, so let me take a look at the top view. You can see a little bit of a discrepancy in this guy here. So I just want to go to the polygon mode, and I want to select these polygons. Let's get rid of this. I don't need those two. And I'm going to go in here and I want to select these guys as well. Okay, so let me go to this enable axis manipulation. I just want to pull this. Let's go to top view. Zoom in a bit. I just want to pull this to about, I don't know, maybe here. L on the keyboard will disable that. Let's go to F1, and then I'll bring up our transform tool. I'm just going to shrink this a bit so it looks a little bit similar to our other fingers. So I'm just kind of pulling in this axis. Now I'll flatten that out a bit. And what I'm going to do is, because this kind of gets shifted over a little bit, what I'm going to do is I'm going to deselect these polygons here and here, and I think that's good. E on the keyboard, I'm just going to pull this back out a little bit. So there's a little bit more spacing on the side there. So we're looking good. I just want to now just make sure that these are somewhat similar. So I'm going to select and grow selection, and just kind of looking at this and just kind of looking at each finger. Excuse me. Let me grab this. These top polygons. UI, UI, UI. T. Shrink this a little bit. I'm going to do the same thing for the pinky. UI, UI, UI. And just shrink this down a bit. Actually, this can go a little bit more. shrink this down a little bit more. Okay, so we're looking pretty good. The only issue I want to do now is take a look at these knuckles, or these lines where these knuckles would be. Just want to pull this one back maybe. Okay, I think that's fine. And we're just trying to get this done so I can bring you into UV edit. Now I guess I could make fingernails. You know, if you select the top of these and you have an extrude inner, you could make the fingernails here. Maybe extrude inner again, and then maybe E on the keyboard and bring up in this axis a little bit, and maybe shrink each one. I guess I could do that as well, but to keep this simplified, I'm just going to undo back and just keep with these just without the fingernails. So what I like to do now is let's round everything off a little bit, because right now it's very square and cubed. So what I would like to do is first, let me select, let's go to line mode, select these lines here at the top and the bottom. Of each finger. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to T. I'm just going to pull this in, pull this down, and just kind of round this off a little bit. I think that helps. And I'm going to do that to all these fingers here. Pull this back, pull this down. Oops. Shrink this down and pull this, maybe a little bit more. Okay, I'm going to shrink this. That looks okay. Now I want to grab this line and this line, pull this out. And leave it a little bit more, I think. And I want to select these two lines, pull these in a bit. Maybe a little bit more, and pull this in a little bit more as well. Kind of center that a bit. And we'll put in our thumb. Before we do that, let's pull this forward a bit to about here. Grab this line, these two lines, and pull these out. And let's kind of take a look here. I think that's all right. I think that's okay. I just kind of feel like this is sticking out a little bit too much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select these lines here and just kind of push this in a bit. It just feels a little bit better to me. And I think that's okay. Maybe I can pull these in a bit back. I think that'll be all right. It just feels like this is still kind of sticking out a bit. Let me fix this. And just want to get this somewhat better. That just feels better. And then what I want to do is I want to select these polygons here, holding down Shift T. Let's compress this a little bit in this axis, and maybe in this axis as well. I think that's all right, maybe a bit more. And now I think we're looking pretty good. The only other issue is, not an issue, but maybe I want to select this one, this loop, maybe just flatten it out a bit. A little too round. Okay. Let's go to UL. Let's go to loop selection, maybe select this loop, maybe flatten this a bit too on its own. I think would also help that taper that I'm trying to achieve. I think we're looking pretty good now. So I want to put a thumb over here, and we rounded that off. So only thing I would like to do here, I just want to select these ends, extrude inner, pull that in a bit, E on the keyboard, pull this out slightly. I think that looks all right. And let's put our thumb on our thumbless hand. We'll select these polygons, D, extrude that out. I want to go to line mode, live selection. Let's grab this line without grabbing any of the others. I'm going to pull this down, pull this out. I'm going to do the same thing for this line, pull this out, two back here, pull this up, grab this line, and what happened here? Shrink this. It's got a little wonky here. Probably because of the angle of which I extruded. I just want to kind of line this up a bit more. And let me look at top view, see what we're dealing with here. Okay, so what I want to do is I'm going to pull this point up. Let's clean up some of these points I had. And let's pull this out, pull this in, I mean, just kind of square this up a little bit. All right, that's looking better. So let me pull this over here and just kind of square this up a bit more. And if I guess I can, let's go to see, I'm in my right view. Let me go left view. And what I can do is if I want to get very exact, I can make a cube, go to polygon mode, UI, and just so I have this one polygon, I'm just gonna, oops, let's not do that. Just gonna shrink this down, pull this out. You probably already know what I'm gonna do here. I'm just kind of using this as a reference. The axis is off is because I didn't I deleted those polygons, but that's all right. And just kind of get that into place. Let's go to our left view. And then what I can do is I can enable snapping. And if I go back to my hand, go to point mode, I'll just snap to that edge. Whoops, grab that again. And that just kind of snaps it to a cube. Doesn't help me here with these lines, but I can at least just kind of, points, I can at least kind of line this up a bit. Let me go to, and then really all I have to do now is well, I guess I could go to my front view, select these lines, go to rectangle view, I'll snap there, snap here, and then here I'll just line this up. Okay. And let me go to model mode, delete. And now we have a little prettier of a geometry there. Let's go back to our hand, polygon mode. And all of that really was just kind of making it a little nicer to work with. Squared up geometry. So I'm going to extrude this out, T, transform, whoops, try that again, extrude that out, T on the keyboard, and then what I'm going to do is, same thing I did with the fingers, I'm just going to select my lines here at the top, and this might get a little tricky. Let's see. And I'll select these and shrink this in a bit. Yep, see what's happening there. No problem. And I can just pull this out a bit. And that rounds off our thumb. And now what I can do is go to polygon mode, extrude inner, pull this out, and like that grade off. And then it's, what I'll do now is I'm going to go to UI, and let me take a look at everything before I make any rotations. Okay, so I'm just going to rotate this around. So see, when I rotate and I have this selected, we'll have to go to our enable axis manipulation so we can rotate around this axis point. And I'm going to disable or L on your keyboard, and then what I can do is I can then rotate this or even rotate it freely in order to get a more natural pose for our thumb. Something like that. UL, or actually UK, and that will shrink our selection. E, L, L again, rotate, and we'll just kind of rotate this around, you know, something like that. And we'll do the same thing for the fingers. I'll pause the video just so you don't have to see me do each individual one, but this is what I was thinking. I can select here UI, L on the keyboard, pull this back here. Let me turn off the snapping. Don't need that anymore. So I'm pulling this axis center all the way over here. I'll disable our axis, enable axis, rotate this around, zoom in here. I'm going to show you something as I rotate. You can see here I kind of digs in a little bit into our geometry of our palm. So I'm going to undo. Just keep that in mind as you're rotating around the other fingers, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate each one incrementally. UK, L, pull this back, pull this up. And you can do this in one of your side views or top views, whatever works. L, R, rotate this a bit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate each finger, UK, E, L, pull this back. Let's take a look here, pull this up a bit. L, R, rotate this, and just kind of rotate this a little bit. So that's really all I'm going to do, is I'm just going to rotate each one just a little bit more than the other, so that the pinky, so it kind of curls, the fingers kind of curl a little bit more naturally, and the pinky is the most rotated out of the fingers, most curled out of the fingers. So let me just pause this. As you can see, I rotated the other fingers, and those are nice and curled. You can see kind of how they're incrementally turning and curling in towards the palm. So a little bit more natural. The only thing here that these tips are a little too flat, and we can check that if we go into a subdivision surface. I'm going to grab this, put this into underneath our subdivision surface, and you can see how these are a little bit flat. Maybe you can grab the lines a little bit, pull these out for each individual little spot. And it's just, this is a little bit tricky because it's of a weird angle, but I think you can kind of work with this a little bit. And it's really just kind of getting this kind of tweaked a little bit. Maybe transform that a bit. Let's take a look at our geometry, and it's not too pretty. Let me undo back. kind of pull this out. Whoops, try that again. Back to our axis orientation, just kind of pull this out a little bit and just kind of make this a little bit nicer. And we can take a look. Take a look at how that's looking as we pull that out. And we can do that with our other fingers as well. And just kind of pull that out. So it just gives it a nicer kind of look to it. And maybe even shrink these a bit. So in this axis center, just kind of shrink these down slightly. Okay, so let's move on over to that looks better. So let's move on over to UV Edit. And I'm gonna just delete this for now so we don't get anything mixed up. So we'll have our hand, and we'll go over to UV Edit Layout. And so this is our layout. You're gonna have, this is where our flat UVs are going to be. And if you go into this object here, UV polygons, you can see how everything is all in this one box. It's just kind of thrown in there. And as you select, and if I go to, we have these tools up here are very similar to what we have in our normal modeling layout. So you can select a UV polygon and you can see it in this flat plane. So our job here is to take these polygons and flatten these out in a way that will allow us to better texture and color and paint our model. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the top of our hand. So I'm just going to go around, select the top here, and just holding down Shift, just select the top polygons along this line here. You can see this line that goes right down the center of the side of our hand. And I'm going to zoom in, select these polygons at the tip and in on the inside. Now you have to go around each one to select these. Now UVs are an essential part of the process of 3D. It's just one of these things that you have to you have to do if you want to make any type of painting or texturing that is not a procedural material. If you're using procedural materials, they're not tied to a UV, and so you don't have to worry about UVs stretching. It's all done through the shader system that we have here in Cinema 4D. But if you want to do any type of painting, if you want to do any type of bump or any type of gloss or anything like that, that all has to be done. You will have to do that. You'll have to make UVs for that. So this is a little bit tricky here because the thumb kind of comes out at the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select these polygons right along at the top. Just like this. So let's go around, just make sure we got all the polygons that we need, and just kind of going over little spots that you might miss. So you want to make sure you got every one on the top, and it looks like we're pretty good. Okay, so at this point what we want to do is we want to flatten out these. So we go to our UV mapping down here tab, down here at the bottom of our UV edit layout, and we go to projection, and you can see we have a few buttons that we can choose to flatten out these polygons. So I'm going to go just choose flat, and you can see here that we have a representation of our hand, and this is the how the flat interpolates these UVs. So then what we do is we go to relax UV, and make sure you don't have pin border points checked, and then we'll go to apply, and now relax this polygons, and we can kind of zoom in a little bit to see that. So at this point what we can do, I always do that, choose the wrong directional tool, and we can pull these out over to the side. So now we have this one done. What we can do is select these polygons, these UV polygons on the bottom, just like we did with the top. So we'll select these and just kind of go around and select all the ones that we didn't select. And make sure you get the thumb. That looks all right. And let's get these polygons here. Select these fingers, and then what we can then do is flatten out these polygons, and I'll show you how we can put these two sides together. Make sure we get all of these. This side. And we have a few down over here. Okay, that's looking pretty good, I think. And I just want to go around this and just kind of inspect, make sure I have them all. Looks like I missed that one. It seems like I have all these ones on this side. So I'm going to go to our projection, flat, relax UV, and apply. Pull this off to the side. And it seems like we have another one here and here. Oh, I missed that one. Okay. So what I can do, pull this off to the side. And I'm just going to flatten this out and UV those, relax UV. And just pull it off to the sides. And then I'll connect those with these other points here. So in this case, what we can do, I can connect our two sides of our hand. And what makes the most sense is to have our seam running on the inside of our hand around this side. So we'll have a seam that goes across and down the center and then on the inside. Makes the most sense is not have a seam on the outside of where you would see the hand. So what we can then do is select on our model, we can select these polygons, holding down Shift, and select our polygons here. And if we go to UV commands and UV terrace, it's going to connect these two polygons or where they're supposed to be connected. However, see how it's kind of wrapping around? What we want to do is I'm going to undo, and I'm going to select all of these, deselect those guys, all of the ones that we had for our bottom. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to mirror you, E, and then pull this around, rotate, E, and then bring this together like this. So now I'm going to go back to our selection, and I'm going to select these same polygons that we had, and let me deselect some of these. Now I go to UV terrace. Now it connects those polygons. And now what I can do is I can zoom in and select all of our polygons. I know I still have a few over there, but I'll get to that in a second. And now I can go to relax UV, and that will relax our entire model. So I can pull this down, and let's find out where these other guys got missed. And that's the one over here on the side. So let me pull this one down. UV terrace, and that's going to connect. So it's going to keep connecting those together. Try to get this. And I think we have our oops, 1 second. There we go. So pin to neighbor, and that will bring this one when you apply relax UV. So I'll connect to that. That way we don't have that polygon stretching across. And we have one more, and that was the top. Not sure how I missed that one. And let me find his neighbor here. Okay, so let me pull this one over here. UV terrace, and I'll snap that guy right in there. And now I'm going to select all and relax UV and apply, and that will now relax these UVs into one map. And now you can see what you can then do is you can then start painting on your model, you know, whatever you want to do with the texturing, you know, scars, burns, wrinkles, and what have you, freckles. And then at that point, then you have your model, you know, ready to go. So what you then want to do is you want to rotate your model and bring this into your the box where you're going to have your all your UVs. You go to optimal mapping, and we'll go to realign, and we'll press apply, and that's going to fit that within your UV area. I put a link in the description to download project files. You can also go to astronomic3d.com to download project files from this tutorial and all the tutorials that I've made so far. Thanks for watching.